Hi, good morning. This is a reflection on lesson 324 in A Course in Miracles. It says, I merely follow, for I would not lead. I merely follow, for I would not lead. By the way, hi, look at that face. I think his little tongue was like barely there. Anyway, yeah, now he's awake. So, I merely follow, for I would not lead. Again, reading the lesson, it was like, what are you talking about? It was just also like, not really not the way things resonate for me. This was very like, Father, I follow you, for I would not lead. Or like a, for your path, your way. And I'm like, that's great in the esoteric sense if you believe, this is my own opinion, if I were to believe in some being outside of myself that I personify, then that lesson, I could read it and I'd be like, oh God, he has personal space issues. But for me, this lesson, because I don't personify an external God, was me about trusting my own intuition in my own journey of self-discovery, self-actualization, spiritual awakening, personal growth. Do you ever just want to breathe in your animal friends and be like, now you are a part of me? Oh gosh, he's the sweetest, most ornery thing. So anyway, enough about like that. This lesson, I merely follow, for I would not lead, I think that's the title, is me about following my own inner sense of direction with my natural unfolding and unbinding. And that's kind of what I want to call that journey. I called like self-actualization, self-awareness, spiritual awakening. To me, it's all about an unbinding process that's just naturally unfolding. Like there's an unfoldment happening. That's the feeling. Like things are unfolding, dropping away, opening up. Words are hard because it's really just about continuing to I'm trying to tap into the feeling of this process. This that isn't really a process at all, because a process kind of has this sense of, oh, there are steps in a certain order. And what this lesson meant to me was like, all of us are on our own unfoldment journey. And that's why journey kind of still is a word that I like. A journey is one of like, there's a note of like discovery in it. And I wouldn't be even interested in this if it was all laid out, clear cut, step by step, ABC, 1, 2, 3. But because there's an element of discovery, like I was thinking about this in terms of like my blind spots. And for years now, even before like bigger awakenings were happening, I was like deeply interested in my blind spots. Like, what am I not aware of? Like, what don't I know that I don't know? Because that's fascinating to me, to be like, well, I know my experience. I know what thoughts tend to float through my head in the course of a day. I know their tone, their textures. Sometimes I'll have new thoughts, but usually they have a similar tone of like, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's beautiful, or like, oh, like self-critique thoughts, or like, your thoughts. And then my emotions, that I have a range that I seem to exist within, and sometimes there are peaks and valleys. And so anyway, I feel like I know myself, right? And then I've always been curious, like, well, what don't I know that even maybe other people don't know, or they see, but I'm not really clear on, whatever. And I was even talking with a friend once. I'm like, can you help me find my blind spots? It was like the weirdest thing I could have asked somebody. And she was like she hadn't, I think it was a did not compute kind of message. And then I was like, never mind. Like I tried to explain it, but it was like, okay, this is not the time, and it's not the responsibility I want to put on somebody, and it's just a thought that came out of my mouth too soon, right before I really stopped to think that's not for somebody else to help me with, and me. Now maybe it is for other people, but at that time, hell no. I was at the beginning baby steps of this, of just like, what don't I know that I don't know? And that's a whole ocean of things, right? And yet there was that intuition that I'm trusting, because that's related to this lesson, that like I will just follow that light in there, that little piece of intuition that says there's more to unfold here, there's more to learn, there's more to discover. And that's what keeps it interesting. So I'm not going to lead as if leading has that, again, note of, I know where we're going. I know how to get us there. That's what a leader does, right? They have the map. They say, we're here, we're going there. Come on. And they go. And they, have that ability to like keep the motivation going. Like they have knowings. But so that lesson is like, well, I'm definitely not the leader in this, but I am merely the follower. I'm following that inner questioning, that inner curiosity, that inner discoverer who's really curious about, I know it's here. I know there's a whole ocean of things I don't know. There's a whole bunch of I don't know what I don't know. And I'm curious about finding out what that is. I'm curious, and I know what the part I do know is that I can do it. I can do hard things. So it might be scary. There might be some fear there, yet the curiosity is outweighing the fear in this whole journey, this unfolding. And man, this lesson brought up that whole like trust. Trust is the central word in this lesson, because who else would I trust to follow in this unfolding journey, in this unbinding journey? And when I say unbinding, it's like unbinding. If you think of binding, I'm like, here's what I think I know about myself. Here's how I am. Here's like my thoughts, and I'm holding tight, and I'm constricted, I'm contracted, I'm bound up. Unbinding is a loosening, a forever and ever loosening, more and more. Some days not as much, some days more. And letting go. And letting go has that feeling of like, sometimes I'm trying, which is binding. So to me, it's just a loosening. I love the words unfolding, unbinding, loosening, the grip on what I've always taken myself to be. Like there's that thing in me that feels like it knows things about myself, that keeps me sometimes from what's really right here. And to me, one of the more recent ones of like something I didn't cognitively realize was space, and something about, probably related to my own history. And that this one to me was a blind spot that then suddenly became clear to me. And it had to do with like clutter. And it may not look like clutter, but there may, like a keeping things full. Like there's a fullness, because I love travel and I love bringing back things like that will have me remember what those travels were, or like things from other cultures that I just love bringing things back so that others can enjoy things from other cultures too, because I live in a small town where a lot of people don't think to travel and it might be scary, or they just don't have the means or whatever. So there's always been this element of like little things, cheap things, nothing fancy, but like little remembrances. And then I realized I was doing a deep decluttering over the last several months. And I say clutter, but it never felt like clutter. It never felt like, because it's not like the kind where you think, oh God, this is a pigsty. You wouldn't think that. I wouldn't. But other people might. But I'd be like, there's just a lot of things filling up the space, even if it looks orderly. And to me, because I didn't think of it as clutter, like as a mess, I didn't address it like a mess. It was like, oh, remembrances and culture, and I get to share these colorful things with people, And then when I did this deep cleaning of a space, I was like, and then I got bags of stuff out. I'm like, I had no idea. Like once I gathered it all together and this is just an example of like blind spotting and what the feeling of a blind spot. So go, if you're still here, you can go with me, but that's why I'm explaining it in detail. So I had bags and bags of this stuff and I was like, whoa. And I'm definitely not throwing it away. I just need to rehome it. I had this feeling that once it's all gathered, I'm like, there was like, oh my God, I can breathe. That was weird. I didn't expect a physical sensation of deepening of breath to come in. I had no idea that was waiting below the surface of moving these objects out of a space. And then what filled it was my own breath. And I was like, what is happening? So to me, that felt like immediately what came to mind was blind spot. This blind spot of like me always wanting to fill the space with things outside of me. But what the space really wants to be filled with is the breath of me. Oh, I just realized that for the first time. So I'm like, whoa. And that's maybe like this whole, it ties into so many things. I could make meaning, like the way I feel constricted in my breath in times of needing to express myself, right? So it's like things seem bound up with this having things out on display, like filling the space with things outside myself. And then that breath, and I'm like, whoa, that was a big and it might seem simple to say it with words, so it was really a felt sense. You know what that's like in your own epiphanies. It's usually accompanied by some big felt sense. It's not just words, because words don't mean the same thing to different people. So with that, I was like, damn, son, I had that huge blind spot of like, here's a habit or behavior I do, not questioning where it comes from. I think it's coming from like, oh my God, I love travel and culture and bringing things back to share and putting them out. And then it seems orderly to me, and other people might be like, there's too much space here, there's too much stuff here, it's too cluttered. They might be thinking that, but for me, I'm like, no, it's all laid out and orderly. But now when I've taken it out, I'm like, and I felt the breath come in, and I'm moving room to room, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I can breathe. And now I felt this lightness and this happiness. Like, it was just pure happiness. I go into a room and I'm like, ah, and another, I'm like, ah. And it's so simple and kind of funny, ridiculous, and yet, whoa, so profound for me. And I'm like, oh my God, what else? What other blind spots do I have? And I want to discover all of them. And the deepest trust, the way it felt related to this lesson, was like, I'm going to trust that those things will happen when they're meant to happen. And I believe the opening to this for me was where there were two things happening. One, I needed to do a deep cleaning of my space. I clean as I go, but periodically, you know how it is, you got to just get everything out and floor to ceiling, scrub it down. And so I was doing that. And then also something a client said was like a wedge in my door to make an opening that I didn't realize. I didn't feel triggered by it. I didn't feel, but something was like a, and there was no intention of her to for that to be a wedge. It just was. You know how things people say they're not even talking about you or whatever, and yet it sticks in there like little tiny light bulb is going beep, 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 flickering on and off, and then when it came on, I was like, damn. So I believe those two things kind of were the spark for this. And then I'm like, okay, so words were said, actions were happening, and then a blind spot was revealed. So to me, I also trust, again, related to this lesson about merely following that intuition, following the trust, following this unknown, following the unknown and trusting in the unknown way that these things come about and unfold, is like, I don't know what will lead to the next blind spot becoming visible, right? And I trust that that's okay, and I'm not going to rush it. Like, how do you rush it? The only way to rush it is to get up in your mind and say, I want to know them all. How do I make it happen? And then I'm just stuck in thought and attachment to thought and identifying with the person who has blind spots. That's just a concept at the end of the day. I just want to keep discovering is what that means. I just want to keep being the discoverer, the follower of my own intuition along whatever this is. And it's really, at the end of the day, just living life. It's just being present to myself in my own life, saying, oh, this is magical. Isn't that amazing? That's all I want for the rest of my life, right? So this was a pretty big, profound lesson for me. And I didn't think it would be, but man, don't you love life? Don't you love yourself?